folks. I'm Raymond Grace, president and founder of the Raymond Grace Foundation. And what our foundation is about is teaching people how to have a better life. Because life can be a lot better for most of you than what it has been. So I want to share with you today some information I have accumulated over several years of doing energy work. And I found things that affect people, animals, and places. Generally speaking, about everything that affects a person affects an animal. So what I'm sharing with you today, you can use on your family, the people you work with, the people you associate with, and your animals and your surrounding area. What I want to share with you is that you have a lot more power, mental power, and ability than anyone has ever told you. So I'd like to tell you today, I am in the self-empowerment business. I'm not in the guru business. So I want to make that real clear right up front. My goal is to help you to do what I can do and what other people I have trained can do. And it is a teachable technique. Actually, it's a series of techniques. And I haven't cornered the market on them. Even though my work is copyrighted, I still am sharing the information. So, like, we just have the attitude today that this is not impossible for you at all. You can really change a lot of things in your life. I'm not going to tell you can change everything, but I'm going to show you how to change enough things that will make a significant difference. I have made a list of things that I have found that affect energy. And all things really are composed of energy. That is the first principle on which my work is based, is that all things are composed of energy, and the intelligent human mind can direct energy. Second principle is energy is impressed upon matter. That means that you are affected by everywhere you've been, people you have associated with, and in events in your life. And third, energy follows thought. So, I want to make this film in two tracks. The first track is explaining about all these things. The second track is for me clearing them for you and showing you how to clear them yourself. Or just use this film to clear them, but I prefer you learn how to do it yourself. So learn from the film and then do it without the film. Okay. I'm going to start with among the worst things I find affecting the human race, and then we will go from there. Now, there's not necessarily a strict order in which to do things. I usually just take the worst thing I find, and this may surprise you. It may cause you to have to think outside of your normal realm of thinking. Well, that's okay, because once a mind is expanded, it can never return to its original size. So, among the things that I find that affect the energy of people and places, and especially schools. Now, if you have kids or grandkids in school, pay special attention here, because I want to do everything I can to show you how to help your kids and grandkids. So, one of the worst things that affects a human's energy field, or the energy of a building, and it could be your home, but most of you watching this won't have this problem. Some of you will, but most of you won't. And that is what I call negative entities. Now, you might call them ghosts, you might call them spooks. It doesn't really matter what you call them. What these are, to the best of my understanding, are the spirits of people who once lived, just as you and I, in a flesh and blood body. Their body is gone, but their spirit remains. What appears to happen is that a spirit that is stuck here on earth still has its emotions, it has opinions. The biggest difference between us and them is we have a physical body and they don't. that appears to be the biggest difference. So that means they still have desires and things they would like to do. And frankly, I think this is why a lot of alcoholic spirits hang out in bars. Why? They want to get a drink, but they have nobody to drink it with. So you've got someone sitting there drinking, and they move into their body, and now they have a body to drink with. Now, let me give you an example of these things. Several years ago, I received a call from someone I barely knew saying something like this: my husband is not the same person he was. He has just totally changed. He is trying to sell cars for a living, but he's only sold one in a month. We don't even have grocery money, and all he wants to do is drink beer. When I thought the matter over, I did a little bit of dowsing on this, which I'll explain in a few minutes and get into it and show you how it works. And I found that the man was possessed with two entities that had alcoholic tendencies. So I told the person, I said, you call me in 3 days. Let me know what happened. 3 days later, she calls. He came home from work that day. The person he used to be, his personality had changed. He stopped drinking. He sold 3 cars in the next 3 days, and at the end of the month, he got an award, a cash award, from the dealership for selling the most cars that month. So whenever a person has the spirit of another person affecting them within their energy field, and sometimes, but not as often, within their physical body, it can cause bad behavior. It can cause alcoholic or drug problems. It can cause problems of violence. Every serial killer that I have ever worked on was possessed. Every serial rapist was possessed. So I want to make a statement right now, and please hear it loud and clear. The number one way to depower an evil person is to depossess them. And you're going to know how before this film is finished. Matter of fact, I will actually put a thought form in this film that I believe it will do it for you. So, the first thing I want to do is set your mind at ease, and there's nothing dangerous about this. I have done literally thousands of depossessions, or you might want to call them exorcisms, never suffering any ill effects whatsoever. So I would suggest that if you have fear, that you not get involved in this. You can use this film and do the job for you, but if you have fear, you will attract to you something that will probably mess up what you're doing. But if you have no fear, then it's not going to happen. So just don't worry too much about that. Okay, let me just give you a few observations that I've made over the years about negative entities. First, there seems to be about as many school teachers with them than any other profession. The two professions that I have found that are affected by negative entities the most are school teachers and police. With the police, I can kind of understand it because they deal with a lot of very negative people and sometimes a lot of evil people. The school teachers, I don't quite understand. But this is what I find, folks. I've taught all over America. And every time I'm in a location, I'll ask how many of you folks have got kids or grandkids in school, and I'll show you how to clean the school up. On an average across America, about 30% of the faculty is possessed. Now, if you're a school teacher watching this and are offended, that's your problem, not mine. I'm just telling you what I found. All of the police friends that I've had, when I told them, they said, yeah, we can believe that. And it's because of the circumstances under which they work. So there are certain areas that have very good energy, and there's certain places have very low energy. And I use the term good. Actually, energy is neutral. How the energy is used determines whether we refer to it as good or bad. So it's all just energy. But you've got a high energy and a low energy. Now, you do not necessarily work to raise the energy. What will happen whenever you eliminate the forces that are holding the energy down, the energy will rise on its own. That's a point I want to make very clear. So whenever I depossess a school or a house or a church or whatever, the energy always goes up. Every time, I have never seen it fail. So I always measure the energy before I start, and I'll talk about that in how to read a dowsing chart. You can't cram everything in one film, so we make a series of them on a variety of subjects, and there's a bit of overlap sometimes, but not much. So, what I learned last summer, I found a place that entities existed that I never thought about before. Yeah, I knew that they were in bars and low energy places, and not all bars are low energy though, and not all bars are possessed. I don't want to give that impression, and I'm not one that hangs out in bars, so I don't really know much about them, but I do know that alcoholic spirits that want to get a drink will go there. But you know why they go to church? Well, I'll give you my opinion. Years ago, when my daughter April was about 8 years old, one branch of the family was having a reunion at a little country church built back in 1883. And she wanted to go to the reunion because they were having a picnic. And I said, well, yes, we can go, but I'll need to clean up the church first. Now, this was just a little small country church. It might have held 30 people. And probably a lot of the people that went there were my ancestors. And in that little church, I found 60 entities, the spirits of people. Were they evil? No. They were scared. Why were they scared? Because they had sat there Sunday after Sunday hearing hellfire and damnation sermons about they were sinners. So whenever they died, their spirit had been told, they had this belief system because they'd been told over and over that they were not good enough to go to heaven. They were afraid to go to hell, so they went to church. Now, you may laugh at this, and that's okay. I simply talked to them, took them across to what I call the other side, another realm of the spirit world, and released them. That's what I call a random act of kindness. We've done it for years. Be driving down the highway and you see some crosses, you take your pendulum and check it out and see, well, are there any entities here? This is what I use. I use a bullet on a chain, and I can drive down the road at 70 miles an hour and check to see how many entities are on the side of the road due to those crosses there, or wreath of flowers or whatever. And if they are spirits that are stuck there, I have found a very time-efficient way just to take them on over and release them. And we've done quite a bit of that, and I'm not the only one. Other people have had projects of clearing up roadways like this. We knew some of the places that entities would be, but I got surprised last summer. One of my friends contacted me and said he had been to his grandson's football game that week and he hadn't felt well since. Well, there's no logical connection there on the surface, but when I started checking it out, I measured the energy of the football field and I found the ball field to be possessed. Not only that, I checked out the fans, which were composed of parents and families of the boys that were playing football. About half of them were possessed. That really didn't make much sense. I'd never found anything this bad before. But what I think I learned is, in competitive sports such as football, there's a lot of aggression. And whenever a person has anger, aggressive feelings, and things of that nature, it changes the energy field around the person, which can then attract negative entities. And I really think that's what's happened. Now, can I prove that? No, but we have evidence to the rest I'm going to tell you. I started cleaning up the ball fields, the coaches, the players, and the fans of the rest of the games for the season the day before the game took place. And the energy was a whole lot better. The people behaved themselves better. Now, I was working for one college referee, and he would contact me before a game and asked me to clean up everyone and clean up the playing field. So that would make his job a lot easier. Well, I was glad to do that. He was a friend of mine. And one day I got an email from him and told me who they were playing, and I wrote back and I said, well, it's a good thing you contacted me, because if you hadn't, you would have had to call the police on this game. He wrote back and said, last year when we played this team, we did call the police. This year, it went fine. So what I'm saying, folks, apply what you're learning here, what I'm sharing with you. If you have kids in school, use this film to clean up the school. That's why we're making it. We found out we could do it, and it helps people, so we're doing it again. We're updating one we previously had, because now we have better information and better equipment to do it with. So whenever we get to track 2, you can just use the film to direct it at a school or a home or an abuse shelter or your local police department or local sheriff's department or whatever you think needs cleaned up. The worst you're going to do is break even. So whenever you got odds like that on your side, there's no reason not to do it. Now, that's probably enough said right now about negative entities. So let's briefly discuss demonic forces. Now, folks, you may go through your entire life and never confront one of these, and I hope that's the case. However, I'm in the business of dealing with some pretty rough stuff. Among them, cleaning up prisons, psychiatric wards of hospitals, places where there have been horrific traffic accidents or brutal murders and all this kind of stuff. It's things that most people don't want to fool with, and I don't blame them. So I want to share just briefly here. Now, don't make the mistake so many folks make. You come to my class, hear this information, you watch a film like this, and then you think that there's demons hiding behind every bush out there. That's not true. So don't go running from things that aren't chasing you. A lot of people do that. Don't live or work in fear. Have confidence. If you have confidence, you don't need any fear. Besides that, fear is very detrimental to you anyway. So, as I said earlier, I'm in the self-empowerment business, but you in charge of your life as best I can. Now, I want to share a story or so with you here about demonic forces. Several years back, there was a lady that was a talk show host in my class from Washington, D.C., and she said, there is a intersection within sight of my house, and for the 10 years I have lived there, there has been an average of 2 wrecks a week, and they are really bad wrecks. People get mangled and tore all to pieces. She said the whole community knows about it, but nobody knows why. And I said, I think I know why. This is very unusual, but there were 4 demons at that intersection. I got rid of them. I'm on her talk show a year later, and she tells the audience there has been 2 fender benders in the past year. So that's all it took to save a lot of people's lives, save a lot of misery. I have a friend up in Pennsylvania whose son works for the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and he gets a report on the road conditions. There was one curve there that called Dead Man's Curve. And there was a traffic fatality there about once a week on average. My friend cleaned it up. That is, he got rid of the negative entities that were there. It was 6 months before there was a fender bender. Now, folks, in class, I asked everyone out there in the class to think of an intersection, a curve, or a place on the road within their community where they and their family are at risk, where there's been a lot of wrecks. And just en masse, I just clean them up. So what I'm saying to you is, you can use this film to clean up roadways. We weren't smart enough to know that when we made the other film about doing this kind of stuff. But we know that now, and we know it works. And to my knowledge, everywhere we have ever worked at cleaning up a roadway, the wrecks decrease. Now, they do not necessarily stop forever, but they greatly decrease. This past week, I was at the American Dowsing Conference, speaking there in Vermont. A lady from Nova Scotia came up to me and said, when you were here 3 years ago, you cleaned up a stretch of road for us that had had wrecks for years, I mean horrific wrecks. She said there hasn't been one since. Well, when you get repeated feedback like this, you kind of got a tendency to believe it works. So that's the only reason I believe any of this stuff. I have seen it work. So when I get information, I only ask 2 questions. 1, does it work? 2, does it help? I don't ever ask the 3rd question. I simply put it to use. I'd suggest you do the same. Now, where you might find demonic forces is anywhere there has been a sacrifice, either animal or human. And I realize you don't want to believe those kind of people exist in your world. Well, they exist here on planet Earth. They're not in my world, but at least they are here, and they're breathing air and drinking water and using up our natural resources. I have a very blunt way of describing certain element of people, and it goes like this. They're breathing too much air. So we have people out there like that. One of the things I do not believe in is equality. That is the most politically incorrect statement that any speaker can make, so I make sure I make it at some point. Why? Because you have some very good people here on earth, and most of that element come to the classes I teach. They buy my films, books, and so on. Why? Because they want to improve their lives, help their family, help the community. And on the other hand, you've got people, serial rapists, serial killers, child molesters, and all that. And I do not believe these 2 groups of people are equal by any stretch of the imagination. So that's why I make that statement. I do not believe in the equality of human beings. So maybe that'll challenge your thinking a little bit. I hope it does. All right, now, what's the next thing we're going to deal with? It's something called energetic patterns. It's a term that I created to describe the energy caused by certain events. And the principle here is one I gave earlier, that energy is impressed upon matter. So everywhere there's a car wreck, the energy of the sorrow, fear, suffering, whatever, of those people is impressed upon the land there. So anytime there's a murder, the energy of that is impressed upon the land. Now, you may not deal with that kind of stuff, and you probably don't, so let's make this a little more practical for you. If you were to buy a house that was sold in foreclosure because the people could not afford it, if you don't clean up the energy, you're probably going to have financial problems. If you move into a house where the people fought all the time, and you don't clean it up, you're probably going to have trouble getting along with whoever you live with. Why? Because the energy of all the fights they had is still there. It's really pretty simple. Now, you've seen businesses, probably in your town, that it will go from one business to another, maybe once every few months, and seem like they all go broke. Well, that happens because no one knows enough to clean up the energy. And there's a poverty energy there, or a bankrupt energy, or something of that nature. And it affects everybody that goes there. So the number one way to protect yourself is don't go into low energy areas. You say, but I work in one. Okay, clean it up. That's what this film is for. Folks, you're not just victims of the elements and the politicians. You've got a choice as to what happens in your life. But having that choice isn't going to do you a heck of a lot of good unless you take it and use it. So that's the purpose of what we're doing here today. Now, as far as energetic patterns go, they can affect you in a lot of different ways. It is one of the most common things that you're going to find. Now, let me repeat. You'll probably go through your entire career and never encounter any demonic forces. You will encounter probably very few negative entities, but chances are they'll be around some places. But energetic patterns is something that changes. and it changes every time an event happens. So that is something very common. Another is negative thought forms. And again, this is based upon the principle of energy is impressed upon matter, and especially if the person is very emotional or very angry. If two people have an argument, that's not only a negative energetic pattern, that's a negative thought form too. Now, can I draw a line and define which falls on one side of the line, which falls on the other? No, I can't, so that's why I just combine them both together. See, folks, some folks went to the wrong school and stayed way too long, and they want a detailed explanation on everything. Well, I don't have it. All I can do is show you what works. And frankly, I think that's enough. If it gets the job done, that's all that matters. So you can combine those two things together when we're doing the clearing. Negative thought forms, negative energetic patterns. All right, the next thing that affects people and places is something I call frequency. And the definition of frequency is the speed at which an element vibrates. So let me just kind of touch on this subject. There's ideal frequency for a human body. More than that, there's ideal frequency for each race of human beings. There is an ideal frequency for each species of animal, each species of plants, each disease, and maybe a lot of other things. So one of the things we want to correct is to make sure that a person is on the proper frequency. Now, this is extremely common. Well, that's an understatement. So let me say it this way. In my entire career, I probably found less than 5 people that were vibrating on the proper frequency. You say, what's wrong with them? Well, it took a while to figure that out. And my mind works a little different than most people's. And one day I was watching a video of Amazon tribe filmed back in 1970, 40 years ago. And I'm thinking, wonder what frequencies these people's body vibrates on. I checked them out, and by golly, they were on the right frequency. Then I found that remote people were on the right frequency, and civilized people living in an industrialized, civilized country were not. You know what made the difference? Electric current, AC current. Same thing that runs your refrigerator and keeps the lights on. It seems to mess up the frequency of a human body. Well, we learned how to fix it. So whenever we get to track 2, I will fix that for you, but you'll have to do it at least once a week because it just does not hold. Why? Because you're constantly being exposed to it. See, folks, energy work is like taking a bath. You can't take one that's going to last you for the next 5 years. It just don't work that way. So you need to correct certain things, some things daily, some things weekly, some things monthly, and then there'll be certain things that you probably won't ever have to deal with. But generally speaking, you need to maintain your energy. Keep it clean. Your energy is your most valuable asset. So stay out of places that trash it. Or if you have to live there, work there, or go there, at least clean it up. And you can do it because I've done it, and I've done it thousands of times and showed an awful lot of other people how to do it. So don't feel intimidated by this at all. We're going to make it easy for you. All right. The next thing that affects people, and right now this is a major factor. By the time you watch this, it may change because energy work has changed over the years I've been doing it. So what I filmed 8 years ago, it was true then, but some things have changed. That's why we're filming it again. We're updating things. Right now, and for the last 3 years that I have observed, there is something called polarity that's out of balance of a human being. And if your polarity is out of balance, your dowsing will not be accurate. Mine isn't, and I doubt that yours will be. Now, you say, why is my polarity out of balance? Well, have you noticed in the last 3 years that the sun does not rise where it used to? I noticed that 3 years ago in March, and I think I was a little bit late on noticing it. But I climbed the mountain one morning to watch the sun come up, and I'm thinking, what's it doing there? It was as far north as it should have been in June. There is a gap in the mountain in front of my house that every year on the 22nd of December, the sun has shined through that gap in the mountain. Last year it went so far to the south that it took it till the 31st of January to get back to that gap. This year, it took it till the 4th of February to get back. What's happened? Well, hillbilly logic would say the earth is tilted. That's what I think's happened, and you and I are part of the earth. The poles of the earth have been unbalanced, and you and I are part of the earth, so our polarity is unbalanced. This, folks, is something that you'll need to do every day, is balance polarity, and another word I use in this that is in connection with it is magnetism. The magnetic poles are out of balance, so I combine the two words together. Again, I cannot make a direct distinction between the two and write an article on the difference. I don't know, but I do know from my dowsing that these things get off, and when they do, it definitely affects accuracy. Another thing that affects people more than most civilized people want to believe is something called curses. Now, there's a lot more people and homes and businesses have curses on them than most people want to believe. But all a curse is an intensified negative thought form. That's all it is. And it can be broken simply with using dowsing. It's like I use this right here. Now, sometimes I use a bobber, that's a flexible rod in some of the films, but I like to alternate and use first one and another so you can see that you can use whichever one you like. Each one has advantages and disadvantages. I'd like to tell you about a story on curses that occurred on a horse farm up in Central Virginia. I was contacted by the owner of this farm saying the grass won't grow. My farm just doesn't have any good grass on it at all. The horses won't go in the corral. The farm has been sold 5 times in the last 10 years. Nobody seems to want to come here, or if they visit, they don't want to stay. And I was listening to all this, and I said, well, there is some not real good energy on the place. I think it was an old part of the old Civil War battlefield, because those places have bad energy. Why do battlefields have bad energy? Well, people have suffered and died there. It's kind of pretty simple, really. And I said, but you've got one horse that is a real problem. She says, I have a $10,000 horse that I bought for 25 cents. I've got a bill of sale to prove it. I said, that man really wanted to get rid of that horse, didn't he? She said he hated that horse. I said, well, there's part of your problem too. What I did, I worked on the land, changing the energy on it, and then I broke the curses on the horse. Well, she shows up in class a few months later with a picture of the horse, telling the entire class, my farm has the best grass in the county. The previous owners have come back. They don't want to leave. They can't imagine what in the world has happened to this place, why it's improved. And that 25-cent horse is the best horse I have ever owned. All that took just a matter of minutes to clear up. So that was one of our exaggerated examples of what can happen. Now, we've also worked with people with financial problems that had curses on them, and we simply break the curses. They were usually put on there by people that were jealous. Now, what I want to impress upon you is you do not need a PhD in witchcraft or demonology or anything of that nature to put a curse on somebody. All it is a negative thought form, and I'll bet you that a lot of you have cursed yourself. I find this in every class. Now pay close attention. How many of you have ever got really, really angry and said, well, I'll be damned? You just put a curse on yourself, whether you knew it or not. Why? Because your head is listening while your mouth is talking. So don't say anything you don't want to happen, because it probably will. You're giving energy to it. Now, another thing that affects an awful lot of people is what I call spirits of emotion. Now, you've probably gotten Christmas cards that says, may the spirit of peace be with you, or words to that effect. So I got to thinking about it. If peace has a spirit, love would have a spirit, but so would anger, fear, hate, greed, jealousy, all those things. So in clearing people, places, offices, schools, whatever, you always want to take those and turn them into something else. You say, what else? Well, you can turn them into peace, love, freedom, whatever you think is most appropriate at the time. Because see, peace and love and anger and fear are simply forms of energy. So the intelligent human mind, having the ability to direct energy, can take negative emotions and turn them into positive ones. Try it, see what happens. Worst you'll do is break even. Now, I want to talk to all of you folks out there that have kids or grandkids in school. Schools are literally an energetic disaster in most cases. Now, there are some good ones, but there are more bad than good. So what I have found is, and I've found this to be true every time, I'll have somebody in class, got kids in school, I will take the school on as a project, a class project for them, and I just do that to explain how to do this kind of work. Now, if you want to take on a project here for what we're going to do in Track 2, I'll do my best to clean it up for you. I can't promise because there's a lot of unknown factors here, but I'll do what I can. I'll do the same thing I do in class, and it works pretty good there. But it always works better if you get involved. And it always works better if people want something changed. So what will happen every time, I will measure the energy of the school, which is usually 0. I will then measure the energy of the kid, which is usually fairly low because they are spending a third of their life in an energetic disaster, in low energy environment. Then I will measure the energy of the kid's home. And it's usually not all that bad, because if these people are coming to class, they are usually pretty nice folks. What happens when I will clean up the energy in the school, that is, depossess the faculty, clean up the negative energetic patterns, the negative thought forms, take away all the fear, the anger, the grief, the greed, all of the this type of thing, the bully archetypes of the kids and all that. Whenever we do that, invariably, the energy of the kid will go up, and the energy of the kid's home, and in many cases, the energy of the entire family that lives in that home. So, if you are working, living, or doing business in a very low energy place, this is affecting your home life. It is affecting your family. And most folks just don't connect the dots here. So anytime I work on a person, in order to do them a good job, I will check what is their energy, what is the energy of their home, what is the energy of the place where they work or spend their time. That will tell me what the problem is. If they have a very low energy, but are working in a pretty decent energy, and the energy in the house okay, I know the problem is in their body. The problem is always where the low energy exists. High energy doesn't cause problems, low energy does. So we teach folks how to read a chart and to determine what kind of energy they're living in. Now, we are also affected by the surrounding area. Sometimes I will just mentally draw a quarter-mile radius around a person's home and check the energy within that quarter-mile radius. Then I can compare it with the energy of the home, and I can tell, are they being affected by the energy there, or have they been able to overcome it? Chances are they're going to be affected by it. A lot of folks are concerned with smart meters, cell phone towers, transformers on light poles, and so on, and probably with good reason. So let me give you a trick here that has worked real well so far. I have a friend that about 5 years ago sent an email one morning that there had been a cell tower put up almost in her backyard. She wasn't able to sleep. She could feel the vibration from it, and it was really working on her nerves pretty badly. And I said, well, you send me an email in the morning and let me know what happens. The next morning, she writes, says, I slept wonderful. I cannot tell it's there. 5 years later, she is in class, and she still cannot feel that cell phone tower. What did we do? We scrambled its frequency. Now, that's just a terminology I borrowed from TV stations once upon a time that were scrambling channels, and I figured, well, if they can do it, I can do it. It is applicable to pretty much whatever you want to use it for. So you can always scramble the frequency of anger, fear, doubt, shame, guilt, turn it into freedom, peace, love, whatever you think you need. Or you can shortcut it and just say you want to transform. a non-beneficial energy into a beneficial energy. Either terminology is probably going to work pretty good for you. It's really the intent that does it. So let's move on here to track 2, where I'm going to actually do the clearing for you. Now, while we're doing that, I want you to think about what you're going to work on. Are you going to focus the energy that I'm going to produce here on your home, or on the place you work, or where your kids go to school, or the bad neighbor across the street or beside you, or wherever? Or your local police department, sheriff's department, mayor's office, or just whatever you think is a major problem. Because, folks, I have a really good track record of stopping serial killers and serial rapists. Now, I want to shoot down a theory that's too widely circulated out there, and especially among the dowsing conventions and metaphysical groups. And it goes like this: you cannot do anything without another person's permission. Oh yes, you can. I've been doing it for years. And I ask these people, do you really think that I go and track down serial rapists, serial killers, dangerous people, and ask if it's okay if I change their behavior? Of course not. You just do it. So don't believe everything you've heard on this stuff, folks, because a lot of it simply is not true. And I'm doing my best to get the word out there, because every time you make a bunch of silly rules, you just disempower people. And there's no sense in that. I'm in the business of empowering them. People like you, okay? So you think about what you want to use for a project, and you can use this film, just the track 2 of it. You don't need to go back through this unless you want to. But you can just use track 2 and work on a project, and then, or have me work on it, really is what you're doing, and then take another project and work on it. Now, if you get really good and can really focus on this, you most likely will be able to work on more than one project at a time. I think you can work on as many as you can focus on while I'm doing the work for you. But I don't want you to depend on me forever. I want you just to use this long enough to learn how to do it, and then you do it yourself. Because you may be out somewhere and are not able to switch on your DVD player and get me to help you out. So you need to learn how to do that ahead of time. And to give you some ideas of what all can be done on a fairly large scale, I have a very nice letter from a Royal Canadian Mountie thanking me for lowering the crime rate of the violent crime from very severe to 0 in an Eskimo village. I've never been there. Those people don't know I exist. And it's well over 1,000 miles away. So distance is not a factor. You don't need to be there. Nobody needs to know about it. Why did it work? Because someone physically on location asked for help. It's always going to work better if you got somebody asking you for help. And it's going to work even better if the group of people you're working on really want help. Now, I'm not going to tell you you can change everybody out there with this. I am going to say that you can stack the deck of life in your favor very well. Okay, folks, I hope you've got a project there for me to work on for you, and you work along with me. Pick up your pendulum and start working along with me on this. I'm going to use a bullet on a chain, and I hope you can see that all right, because this is what I normally use. I use it for practically all the work I do. The only time I use the bobber is sometimes when I'm filming or working with a class, just so they can see it better, but I think you can see this okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is ask, do I have permission and ability to get involved on helping you folks clear your projects, either your home or whatever project you're going to take on? And I get a yes, I do. Okay. Now, I'm going to cover a lot of things that's not going to apply to your house, or at least there'll be a few things that will not apply to your house. But I want to cover everything in case you want to clean up a prison or some really bad energy place, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to get rid of demonic forces. Now, don't get scared. There's nothing to be scared of. So any of you folks out there that have a project that is affected by any type of demonic forces, I'm simply going to turn those forces into pure love. And when I do that, the pendulum is going to spin in a clockwise manner. And we'll just let it spin here until it stops, because the length of time that something spins shows the severity of the problem or how much energy is required to correct it. All right, now why do I believe I can do this? Well, because I've been doing it a long time, it seems to work. We get a lot of good feedback from the films that we've made and folks in class. The next thing, let's say you're working on your office or maybe your school or maybe even your family or the people that live close to you that are creating a lot of problems. Well, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take away their bad spirit guides and take any entities within their bodies, within their homes, within their energy field, or within whatever the facility is. Now just watch where it's going here. It's going back and forth. You understand that? Okay, good. And we're going to ask my spirit guide here to take all that bunch of critters over to the other side, give them appropriate treatment, send them on where they're going. You saw it change? That's how long it takes to do a mass depossession. Now I realize that's probably stretching your mind a bit, and that was planned that way. You see, there's a order of people, maybe several orders of people, groups that have done exorcism for centuries, and that very well may be true. Folks, you and me can have all the spooks chased out before they can ever get their candles lit. It's just that simple. Now you got to have confidence in what you're doing, though. So you just work along with me now. We'll get it done. The next thing I want to do is take all of the negative energetic patterns. That is the bad stuff that's happened there. The fights, the arguments, or if you're cleaning up a roadway, all the car wrecks, whatever has happened in the past that has imprinted that energy upon the land or upon the person, or if you're working on your animals, upon them, whatever. This is applicable to all this stuff, okay? So we're going to take all the negative energetic patterns, and we can combine this at the same time with all negative thought forms. And I'm going to transform all this stuff into pure love. Now, on certain occasions, like if you run a business, you might want to transform it into prosperity. You might want to transform it into freedom. That's your choice. But right now, I'm just going to transform it into love. Okay? Now that's done. Now, let's take any non-beneficial spirits like anger, fear, jealousy, greed, depression, any of that stuff, and let's turn all that into love. Now, I'm doing this for your own body at the same time, because these things affect the human body as well as they do anything else. So you're hopefully getting benefited here just from what I'm doing for you. All right, that's done. Now I want to put you, your home, and your project on the proper frequency, and when I do this, it'll run counterclockwise. There is a reason for that, but there's no need to get into it now and complicate things. Okay, it's going to take a while to do that. And this is something that affects the vast amount of human beings on this planet. Okay, that is done. Now, I'd like to balance your polarity and balance you with what I call universal energy and balance the magnetism of your body and your home and your project, whatever it be. Okay? Now, if there's any curses upon you or your project, whatever you're working on, I want to neutralize the curses. And now if you live in a bad neighborhood or work in bad conditions, I want to neutralize any and all what I refer to as low energy and any of the surrounding area upon you. Because if you live in a crime district or work in one, Maybe you're a policeman that works in a crime district, or you're around a lot of negativity. We want to neutralize the negative effect of the surrounding area upon you. Now, I would highly recommend that you do this. Every time you fly on an airplane, clean up the airport before you ever go. If you have friend, family, anyone going into a hospital, clean it up before they ever go. We've had some very good results with this, of cleaning up hospitals before folks go in there. There's a lot of bad energy in hospitals because people suffer and die there. So this stuff is going to affect people when they go in there. And whenever you're sick, that's the last thing you need, is having to deal with everybody else's stuff. So use this film, clean it up. Another thing that affects folks near the seacoast is sonar. I don't quite understand this, but this is just what I find. So I want to neutralize the negative effect of any electrical current of any description and any sonar upon you folks. Now, if you think I've missed something that you're sure is bothering you, well, then you can just do whatever you think you need to do to make the corrections. I want to neutralize the negative effect of any electromagnetic fields upon you. I do a demonstration class, what I call a dog and pony show, and I have the people douse a scenario of sitting in front of their TV set with a microwave on one side, computer on the other, and have them douse the effect of the electromagnetic fields upon them. I then do a bit of mental focusing without saying a word to them, and have them check it again, and by golly, every time it is reduced. So we've done this so many times, we know most of the time it's going to work. I am no astrologer by any stretch of the imagination, but it does seem that astrological influence does have an effect upon people, it has an effect upon plants. So if you're planting a garden, you may still plant by the signs. My ancestors did, and I do when it's convenient enough. So you might want to check from time to time to neutralize the negative effect of astrological influences upon you. I was doing some carpentry work one day and everything was going wrong. I couldn't even hit a nail on the head. And I got to thinking about it. I got to do something about this. So I checked to see what is the effect of astrological influence upon me. It was a very serious negative reading. I neutralized it, and within 5 minutes, everything was going fine. So, you know, people go through mood swings. You do, I do. We've probably done it all our life. There's a reason these things are happening. And I'm not going to say that I've covered everything that affects humans and animals, but I have covered a lot of stuff. And we've seen it happen so many times. I'll work on a client maybe in the evening, and next morning they call, they're feeling so much better. What did I do? I just changed the energy. And you and me have the ability to change energy anywhere on planet Earth. Some of my clients are in Australia, some in Asia, some in Europe, but distance is not a factor. Don't ever underestimate your ability to do something good for somebody. And the real truth is your desire to help somebody goes a long ways in actually getting the job done. So that pretty much concludes how to change energy. And again, you only need to play the second track when you want the job done. Doesn't take but about 15 minutes of your time. And I think it'll be time well spent. You can play this film and put a map in front of it, or a picture of a place, or maybe even just write it down on a piece of paper. That helps you to focus your intent. And then put this on replay and go on to work, or whatever you wash your dishes, cook supper, whatever you need to do. But as long as you have the intent that the energy that I'm producing is going to your project, chances are it's going to work. We had a couple of people that, according to the information they've given me, have dropped the homicide rate in a city, a large city, to the lowest it's been in 43 years. And maybe somebody else got in there and helped, but to our knowledge, the only thing that changed was what these folks were doing, using a film like this, my old film called Energize Your Life. And they did that. People write us and tell us they've cleaned up their offices, schools, homes, everything. That's what it was for. So you take this information and you use it any way you can to give yourself and your family and your community a better life. Thank you.
There's many a man who would change the whole land if he could just find the right way. There's many a girl who's in search of life's pearls, struggles the whole livelong day. But the water is flowing, the wind is a-blowing, the earth she is gentle and kind. The time isn't near and there's no need for fear, the answer is inside your mind. Change it, rearrange it, the future is yours, can't you see? The gifts that are offered are just part of your reality. Just broaden your distant horizons and we'll all be free. Just do what you do and you'll get what you get. That's one of life's lessons I've learned. If you keep courting pain and you play with the fire, that's one easy way to get burned. But the water is flowing, the wind is a-blowing. We can change this old world for the good. We can stop all the crying, the suffering and dying, if we all just do as we should. Change it, rearrange it, the future is yours, can't you see? The gifts that are offered are just part of your reality. Just broaden your distant horizons and we'll all be free. Just broaden your distant horizons and we'll all be free.